Good morning, this is Roger Thunder with the Red Road channel on YouTube. Before I get started on this video, I would like to suggest that all those that are interested in this channel and the content on this channel go to the show notes, or I probably will also post it in the comment section, and subscribe, and it's free. There's no charge. Subscribe to my Substack channel or page or blog, because I have reactivated that and I'm putting all kinds of information and videos and things of that nature, extended things from what you might see here, additional things. So if you're interested in this channel, I suggest that you go subscribe immediately. The more subscribers I get, the more people I can get to or get my information out to. So do that, please, if you will, and like the video and subscribe here as well. Today's video, I'm going to depart a little bit from the pictorials I have been doing, but I will put some photographs as I speak about my topic today, which is America's dark history and checkered past, I think is what I'm going to call this video. And the reason that I'm doing this video is because I have always looked at history. And sometimes it is good to look at history to determine what is going on today and what we are seeing in today's events and let's say in the geopolitical scheme of things or the world scheme of things. And so when you look at history, and I've always been an activist for the indigenous people of this land that was originally called Turtle Island. That was before they named it America. So I like to go back and look at history and see what went down before now that might give us some insight, into what is happening now. And as far as the genocide that we're seeing in the world today and where it originates from, I wish to make a point. Now, history sometimes is altered. History is spun, altered, propagandized, changed by those who, let's say, created part of that history that wasn't such a good track record, let's say. So when you look at history, you find that the pilgrims or the, let's say, the immigrants or whatever label you want to put on it, that originally came to this land, again called Turtle Island, why were they coming here in the first place? And it is said through the pages of history, if that is correct, that the original European man, let's say the European man, that set foot on this sacred shores of Turtle Island, were trying to escape religious persecution. They had been singled out in whatever area they had originated from as people that weren't allowed to have, let's say, a certain religious viewpoint and spirituality, things of that nature. And so in order to escape the tyranny or the subjugation, or let's say the elimination, or let's say the disenfranchisement of them as a certain group of people that worshipped a certain way, they decided to embark on a journey and seek a new area where they could be free, let's say, with their belief system and that type thing. But isn't it ironic that these same people that came from these lands where they were trying to escape religious persecution ended up doing 10 times worse than what was done to them? Let's put it that way. 10 times worse, or maybe 100 times worse. Who can put a value on it? So when they first came here and settled on this land, they ran into the indigenous people of this land, the natives of this land, which are now called Native Americans. I get it, because, you know, that's the term that's used. But it really is the natives of Turtle Island, or the indigenous people of Turtle Island. So, as communication was established and interaction was established, one thing led to another in the history, and it is shown that the white incursion, or the European incursion, was to be a final death knell, if you will, for the people of Turtle Island. And when we're talking about inhabitants and when we're talking about civilizations, we have to look at how many people might have been here at that time period. There's no telling the millions of people that were here, and when I say millions, that's exactly what I mean. The very, very lowest estimate of how many people were living on Turtle Island is said to be 20 million. Well, it was much more than 20 million. It was more like 100 million. And why do I say that? Well, because there are, again, differing viewpoints of history. History is being changed as we speak. It is being rewritten, so why would you put 100 million if you can put 20 million? But even 20 million, looking at the larger picture here, the Jewish people say that 6 million people were exterminated in the camps in Nazi Germany under that regime. And that obviously is a big deal. But when you consider the fact that maybe 20 or 100 million, or some estimates even put it at higher, 100 million people of this land were eventually exterminated. Genocide was committed upon them, and they were herded into what people today would call concentration camps, FEMA camps, whatever label you want to put on it. So that's basically what happened with the incursion of, the natives would call it the long knives, the white man, the white eyes, the European man. And there's two incidents in particular that I would like to focus in on today that kind of sum up everything that went down back then from beginning to modern times. And the first incident that comes to mind is the incident at Sand Creek, and it is commonly known as the Sand Creek Massacre. This was perpetrated on the natives of this land, and it was the Southern Cheyenne people who were in close association with the Lakota, or the Sioux Nation. They were allies, and they interbred, and they had close communications with each other. They were almost like different bands of one tribe, that type thing. Now, the Cheyenne people, in case you weren't aware, are the ones that had the famous dog soldier militant society. And that society was formed to protect themselves against invaders. And so that deserves worth, that's something I should mention here. So these Cheyenne people were encamped. This was around, the first incident was, this first incident that I'm going to talk about was around 1868, and it occurred in the Colorado Territory, and it involved the Cheyenne people and a chief named Black Kettle and his people. And so how it went down was, yes, there was the European man, or the white man, was everywhere, and he was making incursions all kinds of ways into the land, searching for gold, and, you know, traveling across country in covered wagons, and building forts, and making more and more incursions on the people of this land. And so they were dealing with it the best they could, and they did deal with it in several different ways, with several different battles, which they won. But this particular incident was at a very, let's say, inflammatory time, or a distressing time for the natives of this land. And so basically how this arose was that there was a chief named Black Kettle, and he had this group of people. Now, the dog soldiers that I mentioned earlier had kind of gone off. They were part of this encampment, but they had kind of gone off on their own into wilderness territory or whatever, just to get away from the incursion and to not be involved in so-called peace processes and that type of thing. And that's exactly what Black Kettle had done. He had met with a group of people, Americans, government people, military people, and had come to some kind of agreement with them concerning the safety of his people and of his small band, small tribe, or small band within the tribe. And they were camping out at a certain place called on the Big Sandy River in Colorado, and it was called Sand Creek, 1868. And the agreement was made between the white man and the natives and Black Kettle that if they flew a American flag, or a flag of truce, in other words, if they flew two flags above the village or on a teepee hoisted in the air, that everyone could see, if they flew these two flags, they would be protected from any kind of incursion or attack. And so at this particular time, after the dog soldiers left, there was nothing but older men and women and children and younger men that had not yet got to the point where they could become warriors, and that was a warrior society. That was part of the ritual. So that's who was camped out at Sand Creek. Now, there was a guy named Shivington, Colonel Shivington, that was a self-proclaimed sort of crusader, let's say. And he didn't like Indians, and he also wanted to make a name for himself. And he also was a pastor. What religion? I'm not sure. It was Christian, let's put it that way. You can't be a pastor and not be called a Christian, I suppose. So he was a self-proclaimed crusader, and he was in alignment or came into contact or formed the Colorado Mountain Volunteers, I believe they were called. And he decided that he was going to go into this camp, Black Kettle's camp, and teach the Indians a lesson. And so he showed up at Sand Creek. And again, the people that were there were defenseless. I mean, it was just a peaceful village. He completely ignored the flags that were flying, the promise made by the white man, and proceeded to go full force into the camp. See if I got a photo on that I can kind of portray this stuff as I'm speaking. Here's one photo which depicts Black Kettle. Now, Black Kettle is in the front row, and this is him right here, Black Kettle. He was the head of this little Cheyenne village that was camped out on Sand Creek. Here's another photo, or a painting, or a drawing depicting the incursion here, and we can see the Colorado Mountain Volunteers, and they're coming in all roughshod, and there wasn't too much. This indicates somebody with a gun here. There wasn't a whole lot of that, so you got to be careful of depictions too. But it's pretty good. Shows them just marching into this village and slaughtering every man, woman, and child that they could. Now, there was only a few survivors of this attack. I think one of them's name was George Bent, and he was a half white and half native person. But the accounts and the history, the historical facts are they went in and killed almost everybody, if not everybody, except one or two people, and this included the women and the children and the young and the old men that were there. And after they did that, they proceeded to go in and mutilate the bodies by doing things like cutting off the private parts of the men and the women, dismembering. When they cut off these parts, they actually put them on their hats. Okay. And they made necklaces and things like that and hung it around their necks, and proceeded to go back to, I believe it was Colorado, with this great victory march. And the people of Colorado at that time were pretty much indoctrinated to believe that the Indian was a savage and out to get them, and we have to eliminate all that we can. basically they were looked on like animals. So if you watch the news today, now I'm going to correlate this directly to what's happening today to make my point here. Where do we hear this term used? And what is happening in the world today? So if you look over to Gaza and you look over to Lebanon, there's a certain group of people, just like the white eyes or the white man or the European man, only in this case it's tribal. It's the Israelites, the Jews that claim that they had an incursion on them in Nazi Germany and suffered genocide. But yet we see these same people committing horrific acts of genocide on the Palestinian people. Now, the Palestinian people, to me, are like the Native American people, or the people in Beirut, the Persian people in Beirut and Lebanon, are much like history repeating itself. In other words, you got the Palestinians that are tribal, and you got this Zionist regime that could very well represent America, and in fact it does represent America, because America is in leagues with the Israelite, the Jewish state, okay, and it can only be looked at it as a state because it's really not that big. So they have occupied a certain territory with a certain group of people. This is exactly like what happened to the Native American, or let's say the Native. This is exactly the same thing. Put on reservations, only this is, I don't know if it could be compared as being worse, but it is at least equal to, in a lot of regards, to what was done to the natives. I mean, look at it. You got to look at history, and you got to look at where this originates from, where this, let's say, infectious, insidious thought or ideology comes from. So I'll just leave it there for a minute, and I'll proceed on to the next element of history that typifies the dark history or the checkered past of the governmental people of America. All right, so now we're going to look at the Wounded Knee Massacre. The Wounded Knee Massacre happened around 1890, and it was in the Dakotas and Pine Ridge Reservation. This is after pretty much that the natives had been subjugated and driven onto reservations. Just like I said, occurred in the Middle East, all right? People driven onto a certain reservation. Not that there were walls, they were just surrounded by, back in history, they were surrounded by the Bluecoats and subjugated by the Bluecoats and told to live in certain areas on certain pieces of land, and surrounded, basically. And so you had a lot of people on the Pine Ridge Reservation, and you had a lot of people on Standing Rock, which was fairly close by. You had a lot of people on these reservations, a lot of indigenous people. And when you look at Wounded Knee, you have to look at the history of it, and you see that the problem arose at Wounded Knee concerning, it kind of surrounded the ghost dance, which I did a video on, a previous video on, which you should check out if you can. You'll know a little bit more about the ghost dance and the histories of that. This is a historical channel as well, but I do like to make statements from time to time in regards to certain situations that we're seeing and how we can kind of parse it out and identify what's going on. And this is way overdue. I should have done this. I've been beating this drum for years, but it's really relevant right now with what's going on. So on the Pine Ridge Reservation, I digress there for a minute. On the Pine Ridge Reservation, this is where this incident occurred, and it is known as the Wounded Knee incident or the Wounded Knee massacre. And it all started with small incursions or small disagreements about were certain bands of the Lakota or certain people were going from one reservation to another. And I think there was a man named Spotted Elk, a warrior, a chief named Spotted Elk, and he had an initial incursion with, or confrontation, let's say, with the Long Knives in regards to this ghost dance and whether this ghost dance might be spreading from one reservation to another. And the reason that they were afraid of the ghost dance is that they didn't want any kind of unification or practices that might indicate a Sioux uprising. So the citizens, again, that had come in, hear things, of course, and they get alarmed about, they were always alarmed because they know what they did to the natives of this land. They were always alarmed in the back of their heads. And so were the Bluecoats or the Long Knives were always constantly anxious because they know what they had done. They know the battles they had been in, and they knew exactly what they were doing. It was called a plan of manifest destiny, is what it was called. Manifest destiny, ordained by God. Ordained by God. So what happened here is after that initial incursion or confrontation with Black Elk, there was a group of people that were camped on the Pine Ridge Reservation. And the name of their chief was a guy named Bigfoot. I'm going to go back to a few photographs here. This, unfortunately, is Bigfoot. As you can tell, it's even got it's got that written right on the photograph here. After the Wounded Knee massacre, he is not posing for a picture. He is frozen solid, dead. And that's exactly where he fell, and it was bitter cold in the Dakotas, and pretty much got frozen pretty quick. They're alive or dead if you stayed out of this environment. But this is a picture of Bigfoot at the Wounded Knee massacre. Now, how did this happen? Well, they decided to, they were allowed guns. The Lakota were on the reservation for hunting purposes and things like that. They were allowed a few firearms. But they wanted to make sure, because of this ghost dance thing, or their fear of it, that they disarmed encampments of the native people. So they went in and where they had an edict that said, we must go in and take their arms. So they went into this encampment of Bigfoots, and everybody voluntarily surrendered their arms. Meanwhile, as they were surrendering their arms, they were, of course, surrounded by the bluecoats and the long knives in several regiments. And these regiments had things like Hotchkiss guns and the latest, firearms and, let's say, technology of that time to deal with whatever they might face. You got to remember here that there was real animosity towards the native warriors and people because of the them getting their asses, the bluecoats getting their asses kicked at Wounded Knee with the Custer's Last Stand and all that stuff, which is a whole nother story, which is also in a video that I did in the past, entitled Crazy Horse Parts 1, 2, and 3. You might want to review that. So they had an animosity anyway, but they went into the camp and there was one guy that the stories have it and history, some true history has it, and you can go to oral tradition on a lot of this stuff for true history. Has it that he didn't speak that well, or let's say he didn't understand what was happening. He might have even been had a mental defect or whatever. As one of the soldiers went up to take his gun, he kind of held on to it. He held on to it a little bit longer, like, I paid for this gun, which he did, and I want to keep it. Well, all hell broke loose as soon as that happened. That was just a sign for these soldiers to open fire on the whole camp. Awesome firepower, no chance. They'd already taken the guns of the people in the camp, and so there was no chance again for these people to defend themselves. This is a picture of the burial detail and the soldiers surrounding a mass grave of these people that they had just slaughtered. So basically what they did is just dump them in a mass grave and bury them. And if you look at these people, don't they look proud? Standing for a photograph over... I think that the count was some 300 people massacred, and I think in the Sand Creek it was like 180 to 200 people. Elimination of the natives of this land after taking over their land, after stealing their land, after making incursions into the whole of Turtle Island, or what is known as North America, and subjugating and torturing and imprisoning in reservations the people of this land. Now here's a picture, I do believe, of the only survivors of the Wounded Knee massacre. Out of 300 people, what we have here is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people out of 300 people. This is a great archival photo, all these are. So there you have it. Let's look at the big picture now. Let's just talk turkey about this whole thing. America, named after some cartographer named Americano, I can't remember exactly how you pronounce the last name. I think it's Vespi or Vespucci or something like that. A map maker. America, which is not the right name for this continent, it really, and I can't emphasize this enough, was the land of and the civilization of the people on Turtle Island. And make no mistake about the massive civilizations that were present with the, let's say, the Puebloan people, the Anasazi people, the Hopi people, the Plains people, all the different tribes that were on this land. Some were very, very far advanced. Depends on how far back you go and what geographical and archaeological considerations you take into your research. But there were many, many millions of people on this land, and some of them had very advanced technology, signaling systems. You go to the Chaco Canyon or anything like that and look at some of the kivas and some of the roads that went from, let's say, one civilization to another. They actually did have roads. They had signaling systems on different mountains that were comprised of being able to see a campfire or a fire that was lit and send signals from one place to another. You had people that, went down and migrated into the South American continent and came back up here, and there was lots of trade going, and there was goods, and they brought up parrots, and they had beautiful artwork, and they had organized societies, and they had their own rules, and let's say the traditions and their aspirations and their virtues that they live by. This was all existent before anybody ever came in here, and you had several incursions that came in, but it was always the European man in some form. You had the Spanish come in and torture the Hopi and burn them alive because they didn't worship in the missions or come to the missions and take part in the religion of these invaders. Now, see, a lot of this stuff revolves around religion. You can't just say, oh, it's the European man, or you can't just say it's the white eyes or the white man. What you have to say, it is the ideology or the belief system of these people. And that ideology and belief system was a Christian ideology, because remember I said at the beginning of this video that they were trying to escape religious persecution. And this religion was, in fact, of Christianity or Christian origins. Just like when the Spanish invaders came in, it was Catholicism or the Catholic belief system. And coupled with this, in God's name, we have a manifest destiny was soon to be the mantra of the government, and on the East Coast where it entrenched itself, and the Great White Father, the President, and the Congress, and all these different people that had come into this land decided that they had a manifest destiny, and it was to be accomplished at any cost. Look at today. Look at what was born out of this. Look at what was born out of this. What do we have today? We have the same exact thing. Today it's called hegemony, okay? Thinking that you're the supreme power, or that you are you make all the rules, and if you don't abide by the rules, take a hike or hit the road, that type thing, or we're going to deal with you in a very harsh manner. This is the spirit that we see today with America and its geopolitical associations with countries like Russia and Iran and tribal. Again, what we have here is tribal people, people of another color. So proxies are used. Proxies are used, and Israel is a proxy. Or is it America being used by Israel as a proxy? Sometimes, you know, the tail wags the dog. It's hard to differentiate. But at any rate, it all originated, it is all supported by this same government that came into this land, what is left of it, or maybe how it morphed into another form of that government, but it doesn't matter, because if it was born on the back of genocide and born on the back of enslavement and born on the back of torture, maiming, and killing and eliminating a certain people that again are called savages, or were called savages and animals, the only good Indian is a dead Indian. What do you have today? The only good Palestinian is a dead Palestinian. They must be erased from the face of the earth. And the people that are doing this, again, their ideology conforms to the same ideology that we had when the incursion happened here. This Christian ideology. And so in the Middle East, it's a Judeo-Christian or a Judeo belief system where Christianity originated from in the first place. So as we look at history, we can determine on certain levels, maybe it's a karmic level, okay? Or maybe it is almost like a DNA level, or let's say a inculcation of a certain belief system or a certain dogma or a certain mindset that indicates that somehow you must eliminate your enemies. And this, of course, is said over and over again in today's conflict by the leaders of Israel. It is said over and over again, repeated, these people are animals, they're the Amalek, and the Amalek was an enemy that had to be a completely scorched earth policy, annihilated, exterminated, that type thing. So what we have is a following of script. So if you have these scriptures, if you separate those two words, it's script, churs, all right, script, ideology. Let's follow what the good book says. I don't want to offend anybody here, and I don't want to, that's my least of my intentions is to offend anybody that is of a certain faith or a certain belief system. Because not all people know history, and not all people are buying into the, let's say, the dogmatic section of killing, okay? And there are a lot of people that call themselves Christians that aren't, but there are some people that call themselves Christians that try to follow the precepts of a man that walked the earth called Jesus. Jesus the Christ, or Jesus the Messiah. Jesus And his teachings were not at all like the Old Testament. See, that's what people don't realize. His teachings were that of peace and non-warring and tolerance and love and compassion. Just like the Buddha's teachings. In fact, he may have learned certain things from certain schools and travels in his lifetime. He did travel to Egypt and was exposed to many things. But I digress a little bit. The point I'm trying to make here is that if you follow the precepts, those precepts, and I call that Christ consciousness, it's more of a consciousness. It's not really a dogmatic system of belief. It's a consciousness, in my estimation. And I will be doing a further video on that concept in the future, as I think I will do a video on the dogmen and get back to my pictorial presentations of the indigenous people. I am always for, and I have that blood in me, and have always been an activist for the freedom of these people. But now it has gone much further, and it is spreading out into the freedom of everybody on the planet and the actual preservation of the planet itself, which is sacred in the native tradition, and was a part that was their religion, that was their church, that was their spirituality, is oneness with nature and with the animals and the planet and the cosmos in general. In fact, they even were aligned with the stars and what they called the Star Brothers. Found in every culture, it was a total natural, and you might say above nature is the supernatural aspect. And that's what kept them in balance. Technology and the incursion is what knocked them out of balance. And how do we see that today? How do we see that today? It is technology that allows for horrific things because it's used in the wrong way in warfare to kill people. Technology is used to kill people, to exterminate those that you consider animals, or that you consider not with your agenda, or that you consider to be low life and not to be bothered with except to get rid of them. The only good Indian is a dead Indian. The only good Palestinian is a dead Palestinian. The only good... You see my point here? It's pretty obvious. And it's pretty obvious how when certain things are born into a movement or a manifest destiny or an ideology or a religious belief system, how it keeps manifesting over and over and over again until things come to a head at some point. And I think that's what we're seeing in the world today. And my hope is a return to the natural order of things. My hope is to clinging to the sacredness of the land and the people on the land. And my hope and what I see coming down the road isn't what dogmatic religious beliefs see coming down the road. My thoughts are different, but I'm not going to go into that on this video. I'm going to just leave it where it is today. And I hope that I have made my point here. I want you to be sure and subscribe to Substack and increase my viewership or readership there. The reason you should do that is we don't know what the YouTube and Google people and the censorship people are going to do. And if you like what I'm saying, and if you like what I'm presenting, and if you like who I am as a person and a wisdom keeper, then you will go there. If anything happens, that is a pretty much censorship-free platform. Let's put it that way. And I can do videos right on Substack. I can do live videos. I can do the same thing I can do on YouTube. So I would suggest everybody, just in general, check out Substack, because there's a lot of good stuff on there. Not, but I would appreciate if you would do that. And there's the same information, and I pretty much will probably be publishing the same videos and doing extra videos and commentary. I might even edit the script to this video and present it on there as well, maybe in conjunction with this video. Some people like to read things, so anyway, I think I'll leave it there today. And again, in the show notes is my website, spiritofcrazyhorse.com. Let me see if I got a quick view of that. No, that isn't it. Hold on. This is the website, Spirit of Crazy Horse, spiritofcrazyhorse.com. And my email is rogerthunderhands@gmail.com. And you can find the information for the Red Road Prayer Circle, Medicine Circle, if you will, tribe, which you can become a part of, no charge. I always appreciate donations at spiritofcrazyhorse.com, and my books are there as well. So I'll leave it there today. Always have to get that in at the end. Until next time, I hope you enjoyed this video or the information given in it. I cannot drop the ball as far as beating the drum of freedom and looking at history and comparing it with what we see now and where things may have come from. I hope you think that this video was informative for you. Thank you. Aho.